Good morning. Welcome to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee's Connected Systems Institute lecture series. My name is Charles Mosley, and as usual, I'll be your host for today's lecture, Navigating the Nuances of Level 4 Implementation of IoT, presented here today by Rendela Wenzel. Before we go to Rendela, a word from our Executive Director, Mary Bunzel.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, Rendela, for coming on to our lecture series to talk about this really important topic. You and I have been talking many times over the last several years, Rendela, about the nuances and the importance of understanding the full environment of the places where you're putting sensors, dealing with both new equipment and legacy equipment that is not yet censored in very remote and often highly regulated spaces like you have there at Lilly. So we really appreciate you coming on the line here to share with us the details of what you've done to accomplish instrumenting these very complex pieces of equipment in a global theater that you have to deal with. So thank you, Rendela, and please take it away.
All right. Rendela Wenzel is a highly accomplished and motivated reliability, maintenance, process, and project professional with years of experience in pharmaceutical, automotive, and food and beverage operations. Her experience includes API pharmaceutical/biotech manufacturing, which includes high-risk mechanical integrity processes, corporate global reliability ownership and oversight, engine and component machining, casting, and assembly manufacturing. She recently completed a very large global implementation of an IoT monitoring solution and will share her experiences from this project. Now, before we begin, some housekeeping. Please mute your microphones, enter questions in the Q&A box. We'll be taking questions as we go through the presentation, and also we'll answer more at the end. After this, go ahead, Rendela. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you so much. Everybody, can you hear me okay, Charles?
Loud and clear.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and speak with the group today. And I'd like to talk about where we are the last couple of years that we have been dabbling in this whole global condition analytics IoT platform. And I wanted to share some of the lessons learned and how we have looking at cost benefit analyses, whether you go with wireless or hardwired sensors, things like that. How do you put together a level 4 platform and those types of things? So we'll talk about some of the business objectives, some of the actions, shared learnings, and also path forward of where we go from here. And like I said, I like to take questions during the presentation. So if you have those, please type those into the chat box. I find that when I give these types of presentations, it's very good to generate a lot of questions, and that kind of helps me drive where you would like to go. So, all right, so from a business objective standpoint, a lot of what we do from a PM standpoint is based mostly upon time. And we've spent the last 2 to 3 years on PM optimization efforts. You know, why are we doing a PM every 6 months? Why are we doing PM once a year? And so we utilized, if you're familiar with Weibull analysis, single point failure modes, we looked at a lot of our PM strategies and with failures as well as pass rates to understand from a conservative approach in a regulated environment how we exactly pinpoint a PM strategy for a piece of equipment. So that was kind of the forest from the trees. Then we looked at from the condition analytics standpoint to say, okay, can we take this one step further? And looking at this condition IoT maintenance approach to help reduce interventions, cost, maximize our shutdown time, that type of thing. And we have a very robust predictive maintenance program here at Lilly. And we have vibration analysis, thermal analysis, ultrasound, oil analysis. And that will remain a key indicator of asset health. But how can we improve that current route-based functionality to reduce cost? Can we apply a lot of these machine learning aspects with all of these models and things that you hear about in the industry? Can we apply that to our data, not only from a batch processing standpoint, but I also deal with the discrete manufacturing, so high speed manufacturing as well as batch processing for chemical reactions and that sort of thing. So also with that, can we show kind of that cost benefit for utilizing that technology, and how is that different than what we currently use today from a route-based functionality, a person going out and capturing that data on a monthly basis for a vibration route? So to be able to kind of dice this thing apart, I looked at this as commissioning 3 proof of concepts as part of this whole condition analytics initiative. And I broke that out into 3 different parts. And there's a whole sensing side of this, which was POC 1, and I'll show that here in just a minute. But from the sensing standpoint, do we have the right sensing wireless vibration sensors? Do we need to go with a wireless sensor, a hardwired sensor? And is wireless the most cost-effective way to gather the data? You know, is it better from a critical machinery aspect to look at wireless technology, or is it more cost-effective for the route-based functionality? So we had to look at that. And then we moved to the software side. So we looked at multiple different types of softwares, you know, how to test those softwares within our environment. We have kind of come out of our engineering silo into procurement and purchasing, both IT and manufacturing. So looking at agreements and purchasing and enterprise agreements and things like that. So that was another piece of one of our POCs. And then also the network side. So cybersecurity, that's a very, very important in today's environment, and also the stability and the capacity of our network. And also managing large data streams with vibration analysis. There's tens of thousands of data points that are coming in, and how do we manage that? How do we aggregate that? So here's this matrix in a little bit of a more detailed aspect. Of course, the proof of concept one, we took one air handling unit in a non-critical space to start with, and we wanted to evaluate the sensor technology. And also, we wanted to connect that data to the cloud. So can we do that? And so the criteria for success for that was to, you know, look at all different kinds of sensors, evaluate the viability of that sensor technology. You know, we want to own the data. We don't want it to leave our cloud into somewhere else. And if we decide that we don't want to utilize those sensors anymore and we find something a little bit more robust for our process, you know, what happens with that data? So we ended up settling on Nikola Vero sensors, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. But we were able to connect our predictive data, vibration and temperature data, to the Nikola cloud, and we had looked at the cybersecurity aspect of those sensors, and those met our needs. So the second POC was the same air handler, and we wanted to see if we could connect our predictive data as well as our process data into a smart CBM type of a software platform. We went with Allied Reliability Smart CBM, and that had multiple different failure mode library, those types of activities. And then within that smart CBM, we partnered with PTC to look at Thingworx from the machine learning. So as we move into this machine learning space, we have the failure modes to look at our vibration and temperature, moving into the failure modes to make sure that we have adequate sensor and failure mode coverage. And then at the outset of this, we will look at models within machine learning to take a look at those future aspects. So the third POC was, okay, so this works great in our Indianapolis environment, what about our partners globally? So we wanted to test this network that we had built. We wanted to connect multiple sites in different areas and to test the functionality. So we wanted to try to see if we could break it and evaluate the whole network design to see if we need to make tweaks to that, and connecting our predictive and process data. So we have a level 4 OSI Pi enterprise. Each site has their own OSI Pi, and then it writes to an enterprise level 4. So we wanted to take the data for a subset of just air handlers right now, because everybody pretty well has air handlers, and say, okay, can we look at the process data that we are putting into the system, into OSI Pi, take our vibration and temperature data, and then mash that together to give us a holistic picture of our asset health. So the outcome and solution of this that we had chose is the wireless sensing piece. We went with the Nikola Vero sensors. We put our data to the cloud. We have an approved security approach, so we had to come out of the engineering silo, as I mentioned earlier, into IT and dealing with the business architect side of the business, the cyber aspect of the business. So there were several different players within this approval of this sensor technology, because we don't want someone to be able to hack into our system and adversely shut down a piece of equipment. And then we have a benchmark solution. We've worked with several different industries, as well as pharmaceutical partners. I can think of a few: Owens Corning, John Deere. We've worked with Duke Energy, Pfizer, and Merck, and some generics. So we've been able to, share information back and forth and utilize, like I said, those industry failure modes within smart reliability. And we're able to look at all sites' data, so we can actually see how a particular piece of equipment functions in one site versus another site. So looking at our PM strategies and how the equipment functions, even though it's the same make and model number, it may function completely different in a different environment. So this way we have kind of an overall look of a global perspective, not just Maximo data. That's what we utilize for our CMMS, but we can look at readings 8 times a day with the sensor technology, and we can see how we operate within sister facilities globally. So that is something that we've never had before, and it's been very interesting to see how that's worked out. So these are the sensors that we utilize. This on the right-hand side there, the Vero box there, that is called a transponder. And this is a wireless power harvesting technology. So on the left there is kind of the accelerometer transducer piece, and that is a Bluetooth type connection. It transmits to this transponder here on the right-hand side, and then it goes up via cellular connection up to the cloud, up to the Nikola cloud. And I'll show what that looks like here in a minute. But one thing that I wanted to do, because I only have one shot on goal a year to get into, let's say, an interstitial space and work on an air handler, whether I need to change the belts, mic the shivs, lubricate, purge lubrication, and that type of thing. And so I didn't want to trade a failure mode for failure mode. So I didn't want to have a battery operated sensor in that space, because if I don't need to go in there, I don't want to go in there. I don't want to have to shut the process down unless it's absolutely necessary. So I don't want to have to shut the process down to replace a sensor, to where I would have had to go in and shut the equipment down to replace a belt or something like that. So this wireless technology has really helped us to be able to manage our shutdown schedules. And this is also, I've worked with Nikola Labs, which is the manufacturer of the Vero sensors, but these are for class 1 div 2, class 1 div 1. So these are for high risk type applications. They're for normal applications. We worked with them globally for European ATEX certifications. And what's not on here is a CE certification, which is a CE stamp that Europe requires as well. So those are currently being deployed in our global facilities in Europe for the CE stamp. So here's kind of a pictorial of what I was talking about earlier with these POCs. So on the left-hand side, you see the air handler, and you have the Nikola Vero sensor that is sending vibration data up to the Nikola cloud. Okay. Now also we have a Metasys system that is non-vibration, that is kind of temperature, humidity, flow, pressure, damper, percentage, that kind of thing, that is stored via Metasys that goes into our level 4 Pi Historian. So what I'm trying to do is mash the vibration and temperature data, okay, from the top left over into the Reliability Cloud from Allied Smart CBM, bring that down into their Allied Reliability failure mode models, into Thingworx, bring the process data from OSI Pi down into Thingworx, and now I have the mashup between the process data and the vibration data. So case in point, I may have 26 different Metasys points going into OSI Pi for all of those different attributes: pressure, temperature, flow, humidity, that type of thing. And then I have vibration and temperature. So now I have those pieces coming together to tell me a holistic asset health picture. So when I move to the machine learning aspect of this, I can say, okay, if my vibration is above 0.375 inches per second, and I see a VFD percentage over 90%, or a damper that's fully wide open, then that should trigger me to investigate X. So those types of things really is an assistance for our process and reliability engineers in the field, that A, they may not have all of that expertise at one-stop shop. B, they can not have to go to 4 different systems to find all of this information out. It's kind of a war room type concept, to where they can look on the screen when they come in the morning, they can see their equipment for their area, red, yellow, green, what I need to react to today, and if I need to trigger work orders to have the crafts go out in the field to inspect, replace, that type of activity. So I wanted to stop just a second, Charles, and see if there was any questions on this whole architecture piece before I moved on.
None on architecture right now, Rendell. Keep going.
Okay. All right, good. So here is a proof of concept output. Now, it's a little bit of an eye chart, but basically what I wanted to show was, on the left-hand side is the Nikola Cloud dashboard. So what this shows is each facility. It shows the high-risk assets, things that I need to react to. I also had them give me just an overall red, yellow, green aspect. So if I have 100 different assets in my area that I'm looking at, I need to know which ones that are being launched, which ones I need to react to. And of those that we react to, we meet with Nikola and their vibration analysts once a week. And then also we have our predictive group, which we have level 2 and level 3 analysts as well. And we have just kind of a conversation on those things that are being picked up on, and saying, okay, is this a normal part of the process? Is this something that we need to react to? Or are we seeing the same thing with our data? Because right now we're in that mode of transitioning to be able to give our analysts in the field, okay, I don't have to necessarily take that data on that asset. If it's critical enough, I'm going to add these sensors. So that way, as we bring in more and more equipment, we're not having to add more headcount. We're able to go out and collect more and more data and analyze that data without having to increase that headcount. So we have, 5 different analysts, and now we're starting not just in the Indianapolis area, but we're starting to take back some of the outside contract resources that we've had in the past globally, and we're starting to analyze data for European sites. And so we've got kind of I like to call it the war room. So these guys are analyzing data for people all over the world. So that's been a very big win for us. So we get a lot of consistency. We've saved money from the headcount perspective, from outside contract resources for vibration analysis and that kind of thing. So we have those resources. We want to be able to utilize those as best as possible.
Rendell,
yes.
I have a question here. Has there been any comment from the consumers of this data about the quality? Because I think a common finding is that data that's coming in via these streams and via actual sensors is trusted more than maybe manually collected data. Can you comment on how people are taking this in as part of their toolboxes?
Yeah, so we are actually working on kind of getting that confidence from our, the ones that are the most critical, of course, are the guys that are taking the data in the field. And so what we're doing with the cost benefit side of this, I know you had talked about certification in a financial module within the new certification you guys are working on. And so the financial side of this, I was asked to go back, and we're looking at a belt slip trial for these air handlers. And the one thing that's really gelled is that when we have our weekly meetings, we're going through this belt slip piece to kind of prove the validity of the sensor technology. And so far, the last 3 months, we're doing a 6-month pilot, but we have seen from their manual data side of it and their manual data crunching of the numbers versus what we're seeing from the sensor side has matched extremely well. So there's a lot more confidence, and I'll go through that in this presentation too, but there's a lot more confidence from the people in the field that are doing the work of the sensor technology. So they're getting a lot more confidence. Sorry.
Sounds good. Thank you, Rendell. Sounds like she got a delivery. We're not the only ones working at home, right?
Sorry, I think he was going to eat the UPS man. Okay. That's my fierce golden doodle.
No worries. You're safe.
Okay. So did that answer your question, Mary?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
We always have to think about this culture thing,
Yeah.
Rendell. So I think your experience, especially in the global theater that you work, is especially relevant. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. So on the right-hand side, from a visualization standpoint, this is the smart CBM visualization. As you can see, this is the Air Handler 5 that I had talked about earlier. And so we can see the visualization on the left-hand side with the Nikola cloud. Then you have the visualization of the mashup between the process data and the vibration and temperature data all coming in together. Okay. The good thing about this is that it comes through Allied's failure mode library, failure coverage. It's kind of a network, all of their learnings from working with multiple different industries. And it gives you kind of a failure mode coverage, a sensor coverage, and a confidence that you're going to catch a lot of those particular failure modes within the current sensor strategy that you have. So it's kind of a test, at least the way I see it, it's kind of a test of that maintenance strategy that you have for that asset. And I'm continuing to tweak this, but this has been very interesting as we go through with our process community and talking about not only what we have from the sensor side, but what we're bringing in from the process side. You see there's only 48 and 47%. I haven't turned on those pi tags yet, so that'll probably be in the 80 or 90 percentile. So that way, I think we've got a pretty good maintenance strategy, pretty robust maintenance strategy on our air handlers, so we can just build upon that. Let's see. I'm having a All right, learnings thus far. Several learnings, but I just wanted to put a few of these down here as you're looking at starting this type of a program and some of the pitfalls that you'll run into. And wireless seems to be the right data to allow our conclusions to be drawn. It seems to be the most cost effective. Now, that's not for everything. There's some environments where you have to have hardwired sensors. There's, if it's not critical type of equipment, then your route-based functionality is fine. And you also have to look at how your failure modes generate. So if you do not feel from a criticality standpoint of that equipment that failure mode won't generate before the next monthly reading, let's say for the vibration, then by all means go with your route-based functionality. But if that asset is critical enough, let's say it's a bottleneck operation, it's one of one, it's a standby piece of equipment that when it has to run, let's say a generator, you're in Puerto Rico and you've got a standby generator and you have a hurricane and that thing has to run when it's turned on, then, that scenario is one that you would probably want to do something like this with. So these sensors also allowed us to automate our data collection. So not just a route-based once a month, go out and capture data, but we're able to capture that data 8 times a day. Okay, so versus 1 time a month, we're actually able to calculate that data 8 times a day. So they are slightly more expensive than a route-based program. It's about, what we're looking at is about $97 a month per asset versus our internal cost, which is slightly less than that. So this $97 a month, I wanted to explain that really quick. And what I liked about this particular piece was that if I was going to do a CapEx or OpEx expense, I did not have to go back and say, okay, if the sensor technology, if it changes, then I have to replace everything. This $97 a month includes the vibration analysis. It includes the hardware, the software upgrades, and if they upgrade their sensors, they automatically come out and replace those. And the data is mine, so it doesn't leave my cloud. If I decide tomorrow that I want to unhook these, I do not have to worry about my data being somewhere in some data scientist's hands that I can never grab it again. So that piece of it was extremely important to me. So that $97 a month versus millions of dollars of downtime if it fails was just a no-brainer for us. The wireless sensor data capture, of course, is more often. Like I said, it's 8 times a day. And our route-based program is about 48% average data capture a month. So there's reasons for that. If I walk by that particular asset, it's not running. So that piece of it is an issue. So there may be 2 or 3 months that I don't get to capture that data. And then also if it's a standby piece of equipment, then it may not be running when I go to capture that data. So that's why it's about 50% average data capture a month. So this also enables more analysis versus collection. So if it is critical, and this is what I tell my engineers in the field, if it is critical, then that additional cost is worth it, okay? So if it's not as critical and you're okay with getting that data either every month or every other month or however that piece of equipment functions, then by all means go with the route-based. And then also what we found is we didn't want to have an aggregator. So can we do without a Thingworx or an Allied Smart CBM? Can we just use Pi? I mean, we have Enterprise Pi, we pay for that, can we utilize it? Well, what we found is Pi is, of course, a data historian, and there is a large amount of data that goes, that's captured on a second basis and millisecond basis and transferred. So what we found was even with JSON packets and MQTT and all of those different pieces, we were not able to have OSI Pi be able to be that aggregator for us. We had to have another piece. So that's why we went with the Thingworx and Smart CBM platform. So the other piece, like I said, was to be able to do the mashup between the process data and the predictive data. So this PTC Thingworx system can handle process data, and it can handle multiple different pieces of data in multiple different ways. The other piece is that you want to have a manufacturer, whether that's a Nikola or whether that's anyone else, that they want to work with you on maybe bringing in different sensor types, maybe somebody like CTC or somebody like Emerson or what have you, and you want to partner with someone that will want to be an open architecture. And a lot of manufacturers will tote this open architecture, but what they really mean is their sensor, their cloud, their platform. And I can't do that globally. So there were a lot of really good companies that I wasn't able to go with because of that. And also a lot of other great companies that their data went to a data scientist, they sent the data back and said, hey, you need to replace this bearing. I need the data because I want my guys to be able to do that data interpretation, and those requests go out from that group. Okay, so I didn't want someone in outer space telling me that I needed to do something. I wanted us to be able to confirm that data and then send out the confirmation. So the path forward, like I said, that $97 a month per asset, and that isn't per sensor, that's per asset. So if I have one sensor on that asset or 10 sensors on that asset, it's $97 a month, okay? So when I met with my global colleagues, I said, look, let's start with 10% of your critical assets. Take a look at your site. Let's determine what we seem as critical. Like I said, if it's a hard to reach area, if it's a redundant system, if it's a bottleneck operation, if it's a 1-for-1 or this pump in this area will, if it shuts down, it completely shuts down my process. You know, let's look at those 10% of those assets and let's build a business case by instance. And then we also looked at something that we are trying here for a cost benefit is our belt slip trial for air handlers. And we currently have 48 of those air handlers in the trial, and I was going to show you some information about that, which I think is really interesting as far as answering the cost benefit question. And the cost benefit question also isn't just if this air handler will make it to the next shutdown, but it answers the question, okay, what can the sensor technology do that we aren't currently doing today with route-based functionality? And those are a few questions that are really interesting questions that have come from our senior leadership at sites around the world. And I think it's a great question. And we wanted to try to answer that in just one business case and say, okay, let's just take one piece of it. And then we're looking at other different ways to answer this question in different types of areas of the process. But this one here would fit, you know, since most sites, if not all sites, have air handlers. So we went with this belt slip project scope. And of course, our route-based monthly vibration data has been the standard for years and years. We add our units to the route list that we have in our different buildings. We gather and look at that on a monthly basis. We have a lot more production demands. They are increasing. We're getting a lot more equipment coming into facilities around the world. And we're looking at, like I've said, as far as the wireless technology being more cost effective and viable. We want to increase our predictive footprint globally. We want to elevate all sites to world-class status. And we want to currently monitor machines that have no predictive maintenance options. So with mergers and acquisitions and that kind of thing, some of these facilities don't have anything. So how do we get them to where we are with a lot of our sites that have had these types of things for years? And also reduce the cost of outsourcing contracts. So that was another piece too. And like I said, the one of the big questions I was asked was, what capabilities with the online do we have, and what can we do above and beyond what we currently have with route-based functionality? So we went back to Nikola and we said, okay, we would like to do a pilot with belt slip, and can you detect this belt slip for me to know when I need to go in and replace or go in and shut this unit down to do maintenance. So that's a little bit different than looking at just strictly vibration and that kind of thing. Now we're getting more specific on some of the machine learning triggers that we would want to look at for a particular air handler. So we're just kind of dipping our toe into this machine learning piece. So we looked at 48 different air handlers in 3 different major manufacturing areas here in Indianapolis, and we're doing a 6-month trial. And Nikola has been gracious enough to give us these sensors to try. And at the end of the trial, if the value isn't demonstrated, then we can take those sensors off. We walk away, no cost to us. And these sensors were installed on DP critical air handlers, no impact to site schedules, which was, this was during our downtime here in the last 4 months. We have worked with Nikola on developing our technology, and I'll go over that here in just a minute. And we also utilized our conventional data monitoring to correlate that data to see, from the confidence standpoint, how confident are we that what we're seeing from the sensor standpoint is good enough and as good as what our guys are doing out in the field, because they're doing great work. So let's see, try to move this out. All right, so here's common V belt failure modes. Of course, we have slippage, they stretch. We replaced all the belts to start this trial. And of course, it's only going to slip more over time. Misalignment, these units are managed by precision maintenance. So we have a very robust precision maintenance strategy on these. High ambient temperatures is not a factor on our production air handlers. They operate in a cool environment. Severe operating conditions, also not a factor, and also belt bending stress. So we designed that out by making sure that we had the proper sheave sizing on these. So the way this is done, to calculate belt slip, I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with that, but it is kind of the RPM of the driven over its theoretical. And when you calculate that out, you have a percent slip, which is, it kind of gives you kind of an action as far as when you should take action, if the belts are too tight, they're too loose, and then also when to retension. So with the condition monitoring for this POC test, I kind of put some pros and cons on our current vibration monitoring and our online monitoring. And so you can kind of see those. And with these sensors, so we were able to take the sensing technology that we have with those Vero sensors and add an additional sensor, which is kind of a low frequency domain with the regular accelerometer, and we were able to calculate this belt slip. Okay, so this is kind of the trial data. We're actually in the middle of this right now. You see the Maxwell belt slip percent, Eli Lilly belt slip. So this is the sensor technology versus Eli Lilly's manually calculated sensor belt slip data. And you can see over the course here, it's done basically once a day, and it's fairly consistent. 3, as you see a minute ago, this is where we would actually take action. So we're in this sweet spot here. So far over the course of the last couple of months, we've been doing fairly well, and those readings are very consistent. You can see the percentages here, and I just took a snapshot of some of those air handlers that we're looking at. So far, like I said, the confidence, I know Mary had that question, but the confidence here of the data that we're theoretically calculating from the sensor, and also what we're manually calculating in the field is very, very consistent. So that's been very, very helpful. So that's basically what I had, Charles. I'd be happy to take questions and comments or go wherever the audience wants to go.
Sure thing. So, as the audience knows, as I've been posting, we have our live event Q&A open now to questions. I'll start first, Rendela. How many groups did you have to organize in order to get approval for these sensors globally?
Yes. So one thing that we have, that we've done that we have never historically done is really work across silos. And I'm sure a lot of your audience has had that experience to where, okay, this is an engineering project, or this is an automation project, an IT project. But what I've tried to do here is it has really cross-pollinated several different organizations. We have had procurement, we've had IT, automation, process engineering, reliability engineering, and maintenance. And this has really been unprecedented for us. And there's been, a lot of growing pains, a lot of strong personalities and opinions. But, at the end of the day, we have something finally that's working. And like I said, there's been at least 12 different organizations. And then you have to talk about, okay, well, each one of the sites globally, I manage 18 different sites. So each one of those has their own, opinions and culture.
Okay. All right. Well, we have another question. What are the softwares you use to process data collected from sensors? Rendela?
Hey, sorry, I was on mute. So that sensor data, like I said, it goes up through cellular connection up to the Nikola cloud. So the Nikola cloud is the data repository. So they are able to aggregate all of those data points taken for 10 seconds, 8 times a day. And then that data goes over via MQTT over to the Smart CBM Allied platform down into Thingworx. And that's where the OSI Pi level 4 brings over its Metasys data into Thingworx. Now, the one part of that chart was the reading back to Pi, and I'm not sure what I want to read back to Pi. I don't want to read everything. I'm thinking that I just want to read back, some of the anomalies that we're catching. But that's the aggregator that we used.
Okay. All right. How are you cost justifying this project?
Yes. So like I said, from that belt slip trial, that is the piece that I think is going to be the one thing that really sets it apart. So they say, well, $97 a month is expensive. Well, okay, it is, but so is, $1 million plus if that asset fails. And so it's carrying cost of multiple, spare parts and interventions, PM interventions and things like that. So just going off a PM cost is not something, because it's not as expensive as the downtime. So you have to look at the production downtime. This belt slip trial that I'm doing, I will actually not have to shut down with these 48 air handlers. I will not have to shut down in the fall, which gives production an entire week of production back for one of our highest selling products. So that is significantly important to the company, and that really got a lot of attention, and it answered the question, what is this technology doing that we aren't already doing with route-based technology? So just saying, yeah, we're going to save a few $100s a year on PM costs, that just doesn't resonate. It has to be production-related downtime costs.
Gotcha. Okay. Mary, do you have a question for Rendela?
I do have, and pursuant to that use case, or I should say the financial case, I would imagine belt slippage across the kind of geography you have there, Rendela, could actually equate to some energy costs.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
Because, couldn't you take the calculations that you're deriving from these slippages and then run them against your energy figures to capture wasted energy as a result of slippage? Wouldn't that be part of
Yes.
your business case eventually?
Yeah, so I did not include the energy piece, but my counterpart is looking at the energy side of this, and he has an energy dashboard where they are looking at a lot of these different aspects. And so we are looking at combining forces on this belt slip trial to be able to quantify what he's seeing from energy savings. So he's seeing it, but this trial here, we're trying to bring those two together to show the complete value. So you're absolutely right. It does have a lot to do with the energy side of this, as well as the production side of it.
So we have another question from a late joiner. Has the use of synchronous belt technology been considered in these AHU applications? This would eliminate slippage. Significant cost savings would occur by adding soft starts, which would further reduce mechanical wear. Longevity would be greater expanded as well. Any thoughts on that, Rendela?
Yeah, absolutely. We have done some retrofit for some of the air handlers with polychain and things like that. But for a lot of these units that we're not able to get into or not able to make modifications to because of the production capacities and things that we have to maintain, that's where we started this belt slip piece. But you're right, we have done other projects that we were able to utilize some of those other applications.
Okay. Doesn't look like we have any more additional questions unless Mary has one for me.
I don't, but this has been really interesting, and it's so helpful, I think, Rendela, when you can actually connect what we've been talking about in theory to execution on the manufacturing floor. So, and especially in the really demanding and highly regulated environment that you live in. So thank you for your presentation today. I think we all learned a lot.
Oh, and another question just popped in. So hold the thank you. How much maintenance and update costs for those sensors, if you could give an estimate?
Maintenance and update cost. So that $97 a month, okay, that includes all of that. And that was one of the reasons I went with it, because since I've put those in, let's say the last year and a half, there's been 2 updates. And I would have had to have paid for those if I went with other types of sensors. But with that $97 a month, it includes all of that. So there's been 2 firmware updates, which we have to, of course, control with our local IT. And then also the hardware for them to come out and do all of that. That is included. There's no additional cost, which is something that was pretty important to me and to the other sides as far as, you know, that cost justification.
All right, well, thank you for that. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Rendela, and all our guests for your great questions and active participation. We'll be posting the recording from today's session on the CSI website events page. You can access it there shortly. I'll invite you to tune in on Tuesday, May 19th, when we'll hear from John Fortin and Alan Klotche. Listen in on a conversation between the two who are both part of industry's most esteemed leaders in the business of change management. This hour will be spent exploring topics such as the importance of building the why, how communications matter, dealing with resistance, and building a change coalition that can effectively sustain the transformation you are trying to create. The discussion will feature lessons from real-world applications delivered from the perspective of these two very knowledgeable thought leaders and authors. How to be an effective change agent for your company, an hour-long webinar brought to you by the UWM Connected Systems Institute. Please register for this event at uwm.edu/CSI/events. My name is Charles Mosley, your host, signing off for today. Thank you to Rendela, thank you to Mary, and everyone, thanks for attending.